And we are live. It's Dr. J here with Evan Brand. Today we're going to be talking about chronically low neurotransmitters. Is your brain not working because your neurotransmitters are low? And then we're going to talk about the root causes of why that may be. Evan, how we doing, man? Good to
Hey,
see you.
yeah, you too, man. I'm doing well. And I look at a lot of vote tests where maybe 5, 6 years ago, this wasn't the case, but now it seems like everyone has low
hmm
brain chemistry. And these are firefighters and nurses
hmm
and stay-at-home moms and tennis players. I mean, you name it. Like this is not a rare thing, and this doesn't affect just one group or one set of the population. This is a pretty widespread issue, and this is across the globe. This is not just an American problem either. People in Australia, all across Europe, even South Africa. I'm testing these people, and everyone has low brain chemistry. Now, some argue it's social media. They say, okay, all this short form content, we're frying our brains. We've got too much stimulation. We're frying out the dopamine receptors. I don't know. I don't know if I can blame it on social media because even 10 years ago when you and I were looking at oats, we're still seeing issues long before people were scrolling. So I think it's more so going back to nutrient deficiencies, stress depleting these, toxins depleting these. So we're going to unpack some of this today. But if you are feeling irritable, anxious, worried, overwhelmed, frazzled easily, you have issues with drive, focus, concentration, motivation, you get bored easily, you feel like you have trouble relaxing, you need alcohol or chocolate or something else to relax. Those are signs and symptoms of different categories of neurotransmitters. So, what we're going to do today is break these down and then help you come up with a plan to fix it.
Absolutely. Now, one of the first things we need to make our neurotransmitters work is we need to be able to methylate, right? And methylation is kind of one of these things that sounds very kind of like, etherical, like what's methylation, right? So essentially you have a carbon and three hydrogens is what's known as a methyl group. And so our body has to take, basically, people say, oh, you got to methylate. You have methylation problems. Is your body binds carbon and three hydrogens to whatever these different processes are, whether it's repairing DNA, whether it's turning over neurotransmitters, whether it's helping out with the mitochondrial function, whether it's detoxifying, whether it's generating ATP or energy. Your body is constantly using these methyl groups. And there's certain cofactors that are needed for good methylation. So one of the most important things is just good methylated B vitamins. So an activated methylated B12. We know like the MTHFR, right? That's methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase. That's an activated folate. So when you see things like folic acid, if you have methylation issues, you may not even be able to convert and activate that folic acid into activated folate, into activated LMTHF folate. And so we need activated folate. We need a good quality B6 or a paradoxal 5-phosphate. We need really good quality B1, thymine, B2, riboflavin, B3, niacin. We need magnesium. We need choline. We need zinc. These are all important cofactors that we need to methylate out of the gate.
Yeah, and most people are deficient in these if you're on a
Correct.
vegetarian or a vegan diet. You're not going to get
Yep.
enough of those. And so this is why I've personally seen the connection. I've seen enough people that say on their intake form, yes, vegan, yes, vegetarian, or used to be, and mood disorders, more
Correct.
anxiety, more depression than people that are eating meat. And this is not a political thing. People try to turn like meat or no meat into a political thing. No, I'm just talking straight, just on the biochemical level here. We're seeing on paper more vegetarians, more vegans, even pescatarians. We're seeing lower amino acid input. We're seeing lower neurotransmitters, therefore more anxiety, more thyroid issues. We're seeing
Mhm.
hypothyroidism, and that's connected to the anxiety. That's connected to the depression, to the fatigue. So I know we try to isolate things, but this whole thing is connected. So if there's an issue with the gut, which we'll get into, that's upstream affecting the brain as well.
Correct. So the first thing we have to look at when it comes to methylation is, are we getting the nutrients in through a really good, healthy diet, right? Leafy greens, high quality grass fed meat, maybe even some organs, maybe even some seafood, choosing carb. And then also the next thing is, are our macros dialed in? Because we could be doing decent, but if we're doing way too much carbohydrate and we're causing our blood sugar to really surge up and go wonky, like a lot of vegetarian vegans do, because they tend to be very, very carb heavy. It's hard to find a vegetarian or vegan that's getting 100 grams of protein at least, but they're not also getting 400 grams of carbohydrates. It's hard unless you're just relying on protein powders. That's the only way you can do it, which isn't great if that's your primary source of protein. And so that's a big deal, because the higher your carbohydrate goes, you're also going to burn through a lot of B vitamins and a lot of magnesium, because to process that carbohydrate, the Krebs cycle, And the glycolysis involves lots of B vitamins, amino acids, and magnesium to run those processes. And then also, a lot of times, if we're eating a lot of vegetarian, vegan things, there's a lot of anti-nutrients in those food. And so there may be lots of B vitamins in your so-called whole wheat. But once you factor in the lectins and the phytates and the oxalates and all these anti-nutrients, you may not be able to access a lot of those vitamins too. And so you may on paper see that they're there, but they're really not getting into your body. And then the last thing is, what if we have an MTHFR issue like 70% of the population do? You may need some activated methylated B vitamins. And that's where organic acid testing comes in, because we'll look at Figlu, 4-aminoglutamate. We'll look at methylmalonic acid. We'll look at xanthuronate, kinourinate. We'll look at some of these B vitamin markers. We'll look at Krebs cycle intermediary compounds, markers 22 through 32, 34 on that O test to see how the mitochondria is doing, which can tell us about B vitamins, CoQ10, ALA, all these important nutrients. So very important to make sure we have the methylating nutrients there. First, from food. Second, dialing in our macros. And then third, we may have to supplement on top of that. Even healthy people need to have it. And also, if we're having extra toxins from mold or heavy metals, well, now our methyl group needs even higher. We need even more methylation, more sulfur amino acids, and that really increases the demand. That's where supplements become even more necessary.
Yeah, well said. Let's pull this tab up real quick. This is just a paper on a neurotoxicology journal. This is way back in 06. You're talking literally 20 years ago. The acute neurotoxic effects of the fungal metabolite ochratoxin A, which comes from the mold Aspergillus, which is the most common mold, by the way. So if you've worked or breathed or lived in a water damaged building, a school, an office, some kind of apartment complex, right? Aspergillus is the most common mold that's going to grow. Well, this paper here shows right here, this is a dose-dependent reduction in dopamine. The more the ochratoxin goes up. So the higher the ochratoxin level, the higher the mold toxicity, the lower the dopamine. So it says right here at the summary, OTA causes acute depletion of dopamine. So this has been out there for 20 years. And so it's like when you look at society, the average guy on the street corner, what are they going to do? They're going to run into the gas station. They're going to go get an energy drink. And maybe they're going to be proud that it's zero sugar and it's got aspartame instead, or maybe it's even a healthy, quote, healthy organic energy drink. And they're just going to hit the caffeine. And they're going to think, okay, caffeine is the answer. The reason I'm tired, the reason I'm foggy, the reason I'm a slow starter in the morning is I have a caffeine deficiency. And while caffeine can certainly boost you, it's not actually giving you that true dopamine and mitochondrial energy that something like tyrosine will. So before I run for, let's say, an energy drink, I'm going to try 500 to 800 milligrams of L-tyrosine. And that's going to wake you up and actually feed the brain rather than just whipping a tired horse. I know you do some coffee. I do a little bit of mushroom coffee. So I'll do maybe 50 milligrams of caffeine, but I'm not using it as a boost. I just like it. It's just good. I like the medicinal mushrooms in there. And so I like it.
No, I think that's excellent. I find also too, when you're doing things like coffee, caffeine, I think you have to really be on top of just time releasing the caffeine, right? So putting fat in there, putting protein. So I like to use collagen amino acids. I like to use either a good high quality butter fats or an MCT oil, something like that, because that's going to allow any caffeine that comes in to time release. And you don't get jittery. You don't have any of these problems if you do it that way. So you just got to be, you got to use strategy. If you can't even tolerate it like that, then you got to be, maybe avoid it or just cut the caffeine levels down. I want to share one more thing here. When we look at the methylation cycle, this is important to look at. Let's see if I can get this up here for y'all. This is going to come up on screen. It's going to look at the nutrients that are required in the methylation cycle. Because most people, when they think about methylation, they're just like, man, it's just they think folate, or they think B12. They don't think like the big picture. Okay. So it's a little bit blurry, but this does a really good job. So here's methionine, which is a key amino acid in a lot of animal products. And you'll see that gets converted to S-adenyl methionine. And we need glycine here, right? And then you can see a methyl group is needed here. And that methylation then activates our DNA, right? It's activating different DNA. We need lysine. We need arginine, right? Our lipids are impacted. And then that S-adenyl methionine goes to S-adenyl homocysteine. And then S-adenyl homocysteine goes to homocysteine. Now, this is a problem because if we keep it here, if we don't keep this cycle churning, homocysteine is very inflammatory on the blood vessels and on the cardiovascular system. So this is where we need things like B12, B6 right here, serine, cysteine. These help take this homocysteine and channel it down to cysteine and into glutathione. So if we don't turn the cycle properly because of low B vitamins and low sulfur, this can get stuck. And then you can see homocysteine will kind of churn back around. It involves betaine. So even things like choline from your animal products or the betaine in the HCl, which is trimethylglycine, that's very important. And then you can see more B12 is needed here. And then you can see now we go into the folate cycle, which is tangentially connected. So you can see we need B6 over here. We need more glycine. This is why collagen is so important. Serine. So we have folate to dihydrofolate to 10-methyl THF folate to TH. So we need all. So for it to churn, look at all the B vitamins we need here, right? We need. Let me just zoom in a little bit more. It's a little fuzzy. We need B2, B3, B6, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, right? And then we have all of our DNA gets activated. This is so important. And then you can see over here, we need vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin D, zinc, copper, lutein, right? These are all going to be super high in egg yolks and healthy animal products. So very important. When we look at methylation, we need a lot of different sulfur compounds and vitamins to make that happen. Any
Yeah,
comments?
yeah. I love it, man. I love the picture. I know it gets geeky for folks, but the takeaway is you need eggs if you can tolerate them. You need grass-fed meats if you can tolerate them. I know some folks, a couple emailed in last week about having alpha gal. They're like, "Hey, can you do anything? We can't eat beef at all." And yeah, you definitely can. The SAAT, it's a little needle. It's an special acupuncture technique. They put a small needle in one of your ears for about 3 weeks. I know it sounds crazy, but it works. So I would seek out the SAAT if you do have alpha gal. You're listening to this, you're like, hey, I'm depressed, I'm anxious. I know these Bs are important. I know I want my brain to work better, but I can't eat beef. What do I do? To that few people listening, that's what you do. And that
And
should help.
Yeah, and also it all comes back to the gut too, because so much of the hyperimmunity, the hyperallergenicity, your immune system being overreactive to certain foods comes from the gut. And so there's certain foods you like. I tell patients all the time, like, well, I want to eat these foods, and it's like, well, let's see, let's get the gut better, let's get the inflammation down, let's get the microbes down, let's get the healthy beneficial bacteria up. If we have a bunch of microbes, like I had a patient last week who had 6 or 7 different infections, and she was complaining about wanting to add more foods in. And I'm like, well, we got to knock we got these 6 or 7 different infections. More than likely, there's going to be gut permeability, even if we don't see it on the zonule. There's probably some level of gut permeability happening. That's going to increase the chance of allergenicity. Plus, we have microbes that are 10 and even 100x above limit. Let's get the microbes better. And then we have to make sure we have good, adequate levels of hydrochloric acid. Also, hydrochloric acid, guess what? It's a methyl donor, right? Trimethylglycine. So it's going to be important in that methylation cycle. And so we got to get digestion better. And then over time, the immune system can get better. The immune system becomes wound up, right? It becomes totally wound up as we get the inflammation down. It starts to unwind slowly over time, and then we'll become less sensitive. And like Evan talks about a lot too, let's say you have this gut issue, but you're also got a lot of mold around you. That can also keep your immune system wound up. So you really want to look at the environment, the air, even if you don't fix the mold, but you just get a really good high quality air filter, that's going to help a ton.
Yeah, yeah. We talked last week about these air scrubbers, so that's a good idea too. Let's go to serotonin. So, serotonin is something that you can measure the metabolites of on the OAT test. And the typical symptoms would be irritability, anxiety, worry, OCD, panic, phobias, and then potential cravings. So, it could be alcohol, it
Correct.
could be sweets, it could be starches. So, if you have low serotonin, number one, we can measure that on paper. But number two, we're not going to put you on an SSRI or an SNRI or any of those things before we go and fix the gut, clear infections, and then use specific amino acids. You mentioned 5-HTP earlier. So that's an amino acid that you can use to rebuild serotonin, and you can feel better in a couple of weeks. So that's the cool thing. Some of the stuff we do, yes, it might take a few months to clear gut bugs. It might take a few years to fully clear mold, but we can give people that little glimmer of hope and make them feel better quickly, maybe in 2 weeks by using amino acids. So we often don't use them in isolation. So we're talking 5-HTP for serotonin, but we often don't drag that up alone. I had a yoga teacher many, many years ago who she heard about 5-HTP. She's like, hey, this is great, miracle cure for my depression, anxiety. So she takes it, but she never added any tyrosine. And
Mm.
so when we got her OAT test, she was super imbalanced because she had jacked up serotonin to the moon and she didn't do anything on the dopamine side. And so then she ended up really lethargic and just it was not good. So we want to do these things in a ratio. This doesn't mean, you should be afraid to use aminos, but you certainly don't want to drag yourself one direction or the other. In general, we want to bring these up together. And that's all based on your lab results. This is not just us willy-nilly throwing stuff at you.
Absolutely. Now, some of your best methyl donors that we can get going, right? Acetyl methionine is going to be a great methyl donor. NAC is going to be very helpful for glutathione because it's going to decrease oxidative stress. The more oxidation you have, the more you will deplete your methylation. And so think of N-acetylcysteine and or glutathione precursors and glutathione by itself. It's decreasing the oxidative stress, which is going to decrease your demand for methyl donors. And then our big sulfur amino acids, like I mentioned here, methionine, very high in muscle meat or animal products. So you're going to get that from that. Also, if we have a lot of chronic mood stuff, we may even want a little bit of S-adenyl methionine. SAMe can be very helpful because it does help support some of the methyl donors, but you still need all the precursor building blocks with it. Another one that's really good for methylation is, guess what? Creatine. Not too expensive. So a lot of good methyl donors. Like I'm going to go right after this. I'm playing pickleball for an hour, right? I'm going to go bang out 5 to 10 grams. I'm going to do a buffered creatine, crealkaline. Very helpful. I've already hit my electrolytes. I've already hit my mitosynergy and a lot of my mitochondrial nutrients. So I'm ready to go. And so creatine's a great one. So, that's gonna literally support about half of your methylation demand. You'll be able to support that with a good high quality creatine. And then if you're taking betaine HCl, you're going to get some trimethylglycine in that. And that's also going to help be a good methyl donor as well. And so just taking your hydrochloric acid is also going to help improve your methylation. That's why I tell patients, my practice, I prioritize electrolytes and digestion first because that helps everything spawns from that. And plus, if we're not breaking things down, a lot of times we can be very hypersensitive to things. And so that can play a big role as well. And then, of course, our animal products like our egg yolks, again, as long as we're not really sensitive, egg yolks are great. Or your grass-fed beef or any of your organs are going to be very high in choline, and which are very important for brain and for acetylcholine. All right. Acetylcholine is really important for the Krebs cycle. When you look at essentially you have protein, you have fats, and you have carbohydrates. They all funnel down to acetyl-CoA, right? And acetyl-CoA, right, is very important to run that Krebs cycle, all right? And so acetylcholine and acetyl-CoA, there's going to be a connection there.
Right? Yeah, and this is the real root cause way to fix your mood disorder. I just find it odd that even in 2025, going into 26 here, you walk into your psychiatrist, they're not bringing up methylation at all, which people may be listening and going, well, why are you guys hitting methylation? Why are you talking about methylation? I thought I could just take this supplement and fix the brain. Well, methylation is one of the key ways that we produce and balance our neurotransmitters. So you have to have these cofactors that Dr. J is describing to make this thing work. But when you go into the psychiatrist office, they're not asking, what do you eat for breakfast? Do you have eggs? Do you get muscle meats? Do you get organs? It's just, tell me how you're feeling, and then boom, here's the prescription. And that misses this whole thing. So could you temporarily feel better and have some of these pharmaceuticals save lives in the mood drug category? Probably, but it doesn't fix the underlying issue. So I fear that you may support your mood with a drug, but then you still have nutrient deficiencies that leads to, say, osteoporosis. You've got bone density problems now, or you've got skin conditions now because you don't have enough nutrients for healthy skin, or you've got bowel issues still because you had parasites that were robbing you of your nutrients to begin
Correct.
with. So it's like, yeah, you can go take a drug and maybe feel better on it, but what was actually underneath this?
Correct. And I tell patients, right, and I'll use this, there's a Mosby's nutrient drug deficiency guide, and I'll look at that because that'll tell me a lot of times what the nutrient deficiencies caused by a certain medication are. And when you look at any of these psychiatric medications, you're going to see a massive depletion in the same nutrients that your brain needs to function optimally. And so when you understand that you're depleting your methyl donors, you're depleting all of your B vitamins and certain amino acids, we know neurotransmitters get turned over faster. So your dopamine, tyrosine building blocks, your 5-HTP serotonin and melatonin building blocks, your GABA building blocks are going to be turned over and depleted faster. And so the problem with that is, I'm not anti-psychiatry or brain meds. The problem is they create a loop of dependency, And unless you're working with someone that's going to support those building blocks and come up with a plan to get you off at some point, you're going to be stuck on it. And that dose has to go up over time. You talk to any psychiatrist, if they're on a medication long enough, that dose goes up and up, which is going to create more nutrient problems. And then you're going to be forever dependent. And then,
Do you
God
have that
forbid,
chart? That'd be good to look at that chart. Do you have that readily available? I'd like to show people that, and we could just run through it, for audio listeners too. But this is huge, 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 and I would argue the number's quite high. Like 8 out of every 10 people we test have either a combination of nutrient deficiencies and/or neurotransmitter problems. So I want you all to know that this is not a rare situation at all.
100%. Yeah, I'll try to pull something up here, and also you guys can look at ChatGPT as well. There's a lot of good, methods up there, a lot of good modalities that will show, hey, these are the most common drugs, right? And that we know certain drugs like statins will deplete CoQ10. We know certain beta blockers and blood pressure medication will deplete magnesium. We know even some of the insulin sensitizing compounds like metformin, right, or glucophage, that depletes B12, right? These are very, very important compounds for our brain functioning optimally.
Yeah, I just found a paper here that was interesting. Let me see if I can pull this up for you. This one is in Nutrients 2023, and it's titled Dietary Nutrient Deficiencies and Risk of Depression. So this is a review here, and it was saying that deficiencies in protein, B vitamins, vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, selenium, iron, calcium, omega-3, significant impact on brain and nervous system function, which can affect the appearance of depressive symptoms. So I'm sure this goes on to get deeper and geekier, but that is your summary. And we know that this is growing in kids too. So we see a lot of kids that are nutrient deficient as well. And that's because their mothers are nutrient deficient, even going into the pregnancy because the soil is depleted. So this is like a multi-generational problem now.
It is. And the problem with a lot of this, Evan, is that most people think their average medical doctor knows a lot about nutrition. Frankly, they know almost nothing about nutrition. Nothing. So I had conversations with a handful of Stanford medical students back in the day, and I said, hey, what are you guys learning right now, nutrition? And they were like, we have an online class that's 1 to 2 credits on nutrition, and it's just about diseases of nutrition. Like, scurvy, right? Low vitamin C, you can get scurvy and hemorrhaging of the vascular blood vessels. Or, hey, B1 beriberi, and that can cause cardiac arrest, right? So it's like extreme nutrient deficiencies and the diseases they cause, or like night blindness and eye health issues with incredibly low vitamin A, right? And so that's fine, but those are the extreme. That's not anything functional. And so your average your average medical doctor knows virtually nothing about nutrition. And so when you look at drugs and their nutrient deficiencies, they will know nothing about that. Or what's the adequate right diet? Well, they're going to typically go with the standard of care, which is the food pyramid or the MyPlate, whatever they changed it to, which, for the longest time had 8 to 12 servings of grains a day or 8 to 10 servings of grains a day and tended to more demonized fat, which we know is not correct anymore. So yeah, just got to be mindful of that. The building blocks are vitally important. Now, I wanted to highlight here, most people, even when they eat good things, they may have a lot of, poor deficiencies from the acid and enzyme and bile standpoint. And so just because you eat those things, we have to make sure that you're able to break it down. I can't tell you how often I see on GI maps high levels of steatocrit or low enzymes or acid levels. And so we have to make sure that we can actually digest and break things down and make sure we're chewing foods up well. I can't tell you how many kids I see. It's like 1, 2, 3, chew, swallow. It's like, man, you need to break your food down more and masticate and chew it so you can create more surface area for those enzymes and acids to work.
Yeah, let's pull this up real quick. Let's show people the page 4, what you're referring to. So this is a GI map here on a guy. Let me look back at his symptoms real quick because this might be helpful. So 35-year-old guy here, fatigue, brain fog, bowel function issues, frequent urination. So on the GI, H. pylori is there. So
that's in a lower stomach acid right there.
Got a handful of bugs here, but what you were talking about on page 4 right here, we can look at these steatocrits creeping up, and then we see the pancreatic elastase is too low. So this is the recipe for the typical guy who says, hey, I'm eating well. Why do I still have these issues? Well, look at right here. Your digestive system is clearly not working optimally.
Plus, he has some mild gut inflammation with that calprotectin F50, and that steatocrit's just a sign of, not breaking down that fat. And then he's got very weak, on the weaker side of the immune response. And I'll see some patients that'll say, oh, look, his anti-gliadin, that's a gluten antibody, is good. It's like, well, you could still be sensitive to gluten just because you're not making an antibody via the immunoglobulin A. You could still have other T cell or other antibody mediated responses. So you still got to be careful of gluten in grains too.
Just for fun,
Ooh,
since we talked
look at
about
that.
mold, yeah, this
Dang.
page 1 on the oat test. So for folks
Dang, man.
listening on audio, even on page 1 of the oat, you could see life-changing information here about fungal infections, sky high candida overgrowth here. Let's look at the brain chemistry just to see how this all connects. You see the mitochondrial issues here. Brain chemistry somehow actually looks kind of good. Like this isn't horrible.
Just a little bit elevation on the dopamine burning. A little
Let's
bit
look at
there. And then,
nutrient levels. So
yeah.
B6 was 0, vitamin C is pretty low. So I mean, this guy was trying. He was trying hard. I mean, he was taking a lot of different supplements already when he came in. But
And you
yeah,
go back, show me markers 22 through 32. I want to see energy production. Let's see, where is he at? So he's got 22. Okay, so lactate pyruvate's decent. So succinic acid's high, 2-oxyglutaric low, citric. So he's got 3 really out of whack markers in that mitochondrial section. Plus he's got that amino acid. Yeah, so he's got 5 out of 9 there, 5 out of 8 kind of out of whack. So there's definitely some energy production issues there.
yeah. And
Yeah,
so one of his main complaints, fatigue and brain fog, and that absolutely can be found root cause through stool and urine. Can we do blood work? Sure. Does blood work help you with the stuff we're talking about? Maybe, but honestly, if you have a coin and you're flipping it, I mean, I hope that you're going to land on getting the functional labs done, because
sure.
I see these blood test companies now is getting kind of trendy and cool, and I'm even seeing these ads, these girls walking on the sidewalk. I got my blood test done, and it showed da da da. Which great, blood can be amazing for cancer markers, CA125 and CA19, some of these like tumor markers, and you mentioned homocysteine. We talked vitamin D, CRP levels, maybe some lipid panel stuff. But overall, if you're trying to actually fix your mood, there's not a ton on blood for me that's really going to help me figure out mood, gut, anxiety type issues. What would you say? Maybe anemia would explain anxiety, but what else?
It has to be more extreme to come up in blood. I mean, you can look at it and maybe get some tendencies from it, but you'd still want to follow up with some of the testing we're talking about. But of course, like if we see low red blood cells, low hemoglobin, low hematocrit, right? Especially if we're dealing with a female who maybe has heavy menstrual flow, or anyone that has really crummy digestion, or just someone vegan, vegetarian, we may see the low hemoglobin, hematocrit, red blood cells, which can be a sign of a microcytic anemia. That means small red blood cells, and due to a lack of iron, right? And then we could also see macrocytic anemias or megaloblastic. It could be pernicious in nature, where there's autoimmunity impacting the parietal cells of the stomach. So we're not binding up B12 and then grabbing it at the end of the small intestine in the ileum. And so we may see high MCH, MCHC, MCV. Of course, higher levels of homocysteine can tell us some methylation problems. We may also just see, hey, look, our serum protein is, in the mid to low 6s. We may see lower BUN. We may see lower creatinine. Those could be some signs of lower protein. And if I see lower protein signs, I'm going to assume that we're not making acid and enzymes, and other nutrients are also not absorbing well too.
Yeah, well said. So you can extract info from blood. However,
It's
if
not
you
enough
want,
though. It just
yeah,
says, okay, let's now do this. So it wouldn't be enough for me to say, hey, this is it. I want other testing too, but it can give you a pretty good idea, especially if it's extreme.
yeah, well said. So we want you to get an oat. We want you to get a GI. I mean, those are kind of the baseline things you should be doing. So I know
Correct.
if you get bogged down with some of this geeky methylation talk, the takeaway is simple. Get an oat, get a GI once a year. Look for infections, look for nutrient deficiencies, look for brain chemistry imbalances that you can use specific herbals, botanicals, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, whatever we need to do to fix all those roadblocks to your healing and happiness. In our optimal state as humans, you can feel happy and joyful and energetic and calm and not require substances to get you to that level. The problem is, all of us are so messed up now that we forgot what normal is like. So we get used to this suboptimal level of performance, and we just think this is just the way I am. It's hormones, it's menopause, it's aging, I'm just getting old, blah, blah, blah. No, you can thrive and you can make your brain work so good that you literally run laps around everyone else. And that's why we do this. We do this because we want you to be the best version of yourself, so you can be the best dad, you could be the best husband, you could be the best friend, the best entrepreneur, the best CEO, the best worker, the best, housewife. Like, all these things that we're talking about are not just for you to geek out on. We want this to translate into you being able to play and engage with your kids. But if you
Correct.
have low serotonin, you're going to be so overloaded from a sensory perspective. You're going to be so irritable. You don't want to play with your kids. Or maybe you want to start this new project, or maybe you've got your garage so full of stuff that you can't even park your cars in it. We want you to have the motivation to be able to declutter and get rid of things you don't need. But when your brain chemistry is stuck in a fog, either from, like you saw on the oat test here, a candida issue or a mold issue or low amino acids, you're going to be stuck. And this is why people become hoarders. We could do a whole episode on, like, why do you do the things you do? Sure, there's trauma and, sentimental value to stuff people hold on to. But if you think about a high performer in general, you're probably not a hoarder. You're probably able to clear your mind, clear the
Hmm.
clutter in both your physical and your mental world to perform at your best.
Correct. Correct. And I wanted to highlight one more thing. Those are all valid, very valid points. We talked about the nutrients. We talked about the gut. We talked about some of the amino acid building blocks, right? We talked about 5-HTP / serotonin building blocks, which also then converts downstream to your melatonin sleep hormones. We talked about tyrosine or phenylalanine, tyrosine to L-DOPA, L-DOPA to dopamine, very important. I also want to talk about the glutamate aspect. So when your brain becomes overly inflamed, you make this neurotransmitter compound called glutamate. And that glutamate hits the NMDA receptor site and the AMPA receptor sites of the brain. That's N-methyl D-aspartate. And so that when that becomes overactive, it creates this electrical surge, right? Where the brain can't calm down. People that are OCD have a hard time focus. They can't relax, right? And it's going to create overstimulation in the brain. It's also going to impact the mitochondria, create mitochondrial stress. It'll create free radical damage. It's going to damage that cell membrane. You're going to have less ATP production, right? And so
Why
you're
would it
going to
get
see.
messed up? If people are listening, they're like, okay, how do I end up with a glutamate issue?
So the first thing is you're eating really crummy foods, whether it's monosodium glutamate, aspartame, artificial sweeteners. And of course, if you're eating those things, you're going to be potentially eating things like gluten or just inflammatory foods, junky seed oils. These are going to create inflammation. Inflammation in the gut creates permeability issues in the gut via the tight junctions. And that same permeability can then cross over to the astrocytes of the brain, which is essentially the blood-brain barrier. And when that starts to become more permeable, then you get these reactive oxygen species. You're going to get reactive nitrogen species. You're going to see nuclear factor kappa beta. You're going to see COX pathways. You'll see these microglia, which are the immune cells of the brain. And when they're overactive in the brain, you're going to be tired. You're going to be fatigued. You're going to have brain fog. And so it's a vicious cycle, right? And so as we have gut issues, we have brain issues. As we have brain issues, it feeds back and creates more gut issues. It's a vicious cycle. And so we need nutrients to actually calm that down. So things like theanine, N-acetylcysteine, things that bring down the oxidation. Glutathione is great, but it does not cross the blood-brain barrier well. And so we need things, even GABA, right? Especially if someone already has brain permeability, GABA can still be very helpful to calm down the glutamate. And then it takes that glutamate and it can bring it downstream to GABA, which becomes the brake. Now the brain can relax more. But again, if you have lipopolysaccharides from bad bacteria, or you mentioned fungal overgrowth, and the acetaldehyde is a byproduct, that can impact the cell salinol. Cell salinol is a compound that overstimulates the midbrain and creates dopamine issues in the brain, right? That's how candida can cause problems, right? And then, of course, the root causes of all this stuff: H. pylori, SIBO, bacterial overgrowth, parasites, potential mold issue, chronic food allergens, right? So it's a lot of things, right? That's why it's really good. We're putting a lot of information out here. Try to grab a one or two things that you can work on. But if you get overwhelmed, you can reach out to Evan at evanbrand.com or myself, Dr. J at justinhealth.com. We see this all the time. We've been seeing probably together over 10,000 patients for the last 15 years. And so we are skilled to be able to dive in and work with patients that are dealing with these exact things.
And it's fun. It's fun. Okay. I know some
Yep.
of this gets geeky. You might get bogged down by it, but we make it simple. Once we look at your labs, we'll make you a custom protocol that makes sense for your specific issues. This is not cookie cutter stuff that we're doing. Everything is case specific. The dosages, the forms. Are we doing capsules? Are we doing powders? Are we doing liquids? Is it for kids? Is it for adults? So everything is going to be dosed out the way it needs to, so that you can look at your protocol, dial that in, tweak some of the diet modifications we need to do, and then boom, you're on your way to being the best version of yourself. So yeah, reach out if you need help. justinhealth.com, evanbrand.com. We're happy to help you all, and we love doing this. So wherever you are in the world, we have distribution worldwide. So just reach out. Don't be shy. We'll be happy to help, and you're going to have fun in the process. Most importantly, you're going to learn how to actually fish. That's our goal. Teach you how to fish, so
Yep.
that when you're feeling low, you can bring this in or bring that in and feel better.
And there aren't a lot of functional medicine practitioners, in my opinion, that are skilled to look at testing and assessing mold in someone's house, mold in someone's body, how to successfully and cost effectively remediate mold in a house, to decrease the mold mycotoxins, how to clean things. And so, because Evan and I have had our own health challenges and our own mold challenges, we know exactly how to do it. And we know how to do it in a very cost effective way. If you have mold issues, it's really overwhelming when people are telling you things cost tens of thousands of dollars where there may be cheaper alternatives that can be done.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. Fear is not good. So let us help you cut through the fear. Some
Mhm.
people use fear to, I don't know, sell, if you will, or motivate people, but that's not how we roll. We want to just give you the data and help you walk through it. So be happy to help you guys. Please reach out, evanbrand.com, justinhealth.com, book a call. We'll be here
All right, guys, have an awesome one. You guys take care. Have a good one. Evan, peace,
later.
bro.
Bye
Bye.
bye.